also some very serious questions to answer today.
Well, you asked the question in your column this morning, can Wirecard be saved or should it? Do they still have their best customers, or have those customers split?
My expectation is that all of Wirecard's customers will be very seriously looking at their relationship with the company. At the end of the day, payments is an industry that's built fundamentally on trust. If you're handling people's money, then they need to be able to trust you. And as such, I mean, it's the responsibility of all Wirecard's companies and partners, clients and partners, to look at that relationship and decide if they want to continue doing business. Now, if they don't, of course, then Wirecard will be worth less, and that's a serious problem because the banks have got a huge amount of exposure to Wirecard in terms of about $2 billion of loans. There's also, of course, Wirecard's bonds, which are trading deeply underwater at the moment. And so in order to recover value, and Wirecard is desperate now to try and cut costs, restructure, sell assets in order to remain in business, they really need to get their skates on. Looking at disposals is one approach, but any potential buyer would, of course, be very wary of taking on.
What do we look for next to see whether or not the company can survive? What's the next indication of the future of this company? Is it the bonds? Well, I think Chris, you still there? All right. Well, this could very well undermine confidence in German markets as well, and market regulators there. That's why we're keeping a close eye on this company, Wirecard. And again, the arrest of the former CEO this morning. Bloomberg opinion columnist Chris Bryant, thanks for your participation this morning. Karen, back to you.
All right, John, thank you. It is 5:52 on Wall Street. Time now for the Bloomberg Law Report. Let's get to the legal stories we're watching this morning from Bloomberg's Jeff Bellinger.
The EPA will boost its oversight of imported goods coated with certain PFAs. The agency released new regulations covering so-called forever chemicals. A report from the Commonwealth Fund says most furloughed workers are holding on to their employer-provided health coverage, at least for now. And an appeals court in Florida ruled that a Disney World hotel must be reappraised. The court found errors were made by both the county assessor and Disney.
Bloomberg Law. Everything you need on one legal research platform. Guidance, analysis, and Bloomberg Market Intelligence. Find out more at BloombergLaw.com.
And now another legal story we're watching. The resignation of Jeffrey Berman as the U.S. Attorney for Manhattan. The move brings more questions and answers following a remarkable standoff with Attorney General William Barr and contradictory comments from the White House. For more on the situation, Bloomberg's June Grasso speaks to former federal prosecutor Robert Mintz, a partner at McCarter & English.
We don't know what the real reasons are behind this, but we do know that Barr offered Berman other positions within the Justice Department. What does that indicate to you?
Mr. Barr gave no reason for ousting Mr. Berman. In fact, he issued a statement praising him. It appears that they offered Mr. Berman a couple of other positions within Department of Justice that he was not interested in taking. So we really don't know exactly what touched off this confrontation. What we do know is that Mr. Berman really dug his heels in a very surprising and unprecedented way. And one of the things that's interesting here about the unique situation that Mr. Berman found himself in is that he was never actually appointed by President Trump to fill his position in the first place. He was placed in that position in January 2018 by then Attorney General Jeff Sessions. He was in that position for a period of time until the judges of the Southern District appointed him to that position after he had already spent 120 days in the position. So technically, Mr. Berman was an appointee of the judges of the Southern District and not the president. And that's exactly what he said when he issued his statement refusing to step down.
We have heard time and time again about the independence of the Southern District, where they refer to it as the sovereign district. But does this show that there's only so much independence to be had? Because they have to answer to the Justice Department and the Attorney General.
Yes, and I think that's ultimately where this would have headed. For a few minutes, there was going to be a possibility that there would be this standoff between Mr. Berman and the Attorney General, and ultimately that could have ended up in court, where a court would have to look at these two potentially conflicting statutes. One which said that a court-appointed U.S. attorney, which is what Mr. Berman was, serves in that position until the vacancy is filled, which means until another U.S. attorney is nominated by the president and approved with the consent of the Senate. That was the position Mr. Berman took initially. On the other hand, there's another statute that says that the United States attorneys are appointed for 4-year terms and that the president retains the authority to remove the United States attorney. That is probably the position that would ultimately prevail here. I think ultimately the courts would have said that the president does have the authority to remove U.S. attorneys, and that's where this was headed.
That's Robert Mansa, partner at McCarter & English, speaking with Bloomberg's June Grasso. Catch more of that interview plus analysis of the latest legal news by subscribing to the Bloomberg Law Podcast or downloading the show at Bloomberg.com/podcasts. And attorneys can find exceptional legal research and business development tools at BloombergLaw.com. Nathan.
All right, Karen, thank you. It's 5:56 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg NJIT STEM Report, brought to you by New Jersey Institute of Technology, providing industry partners with commercially focused research and innovation services through its New Jersey Innovation Institute. Learn more at njii.com. Now let's see what's happening in science, technology, engineering, and math. Archaeologists say they've discovered a major prehistoric monument under the earth near Stonehenge. It could shed new light on the origins of the mystical stone circle in southwestern England. Experts from a group of British universities say the site consists of at least 20 huge shafts more than 32 feet in diameter and 16 feet deep, forming a circle more than 1.2 miles in diameter. Researchers say the shafts appear to have been dug around 4,500 years ago. Apple has introduced a new set of features for its smartwatch that include sleep tracking, an updated fitness app, and the ability to track washing your hands. The new function lets the Apple Watch monitor a wearer's sleep patterns and quality of sleep. That new hand washing monitor tells users how long they should wash their hands. And the redesigned fitness app can track dancing and core training workouts. And more than 1,600 Google employees are demanding the company quit working with police. They want CEO Sundar Pichai to end the sale of the company's technology to law enforcement. Staff say that would provide action to reinforce statements against police brutality. And that is today's Bloomberg NJIT STEM Report. Karen.
All right, Nathan, thank you. S&P futures are higher, up about 22 points. Dow futures up 195, and NASDAQ futures up 62. The 10-year Treasury down 132nd, yield 0.71%. The yield on the 2-year 0.19%. NYMEX crude oil is up 1.5% or 59 cents at $41.32 a barrel. And COMEX gold is up 0.3% or $5.20 at $17.71.70 an ounce. And Bloomberg Daybreak continues. This is Bloomberg.
Influential conversation.
Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Tuesday morning by the scruff of the neck. Take this sunshine as an omen and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
You know that feeling when you get more than you expected? Like discovering that the box of chocolates has a whole other layer underneath? Or scoring extra poppadoms with your takeaway? Or joining Tesco Mobile and finding out you get the latest phones and 99% UK network coverage? Yeah, that moment feels good, right? Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
99% 4G population coverage indoors and outdoors across UK.
Today at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak for Tuesday, June 23rd, 2020. Coming up this hour.
Global stocks get whipsawed by worries over the U.S.-China trade agreement.
President Trump takes to Twitter to soothe concerns, saying the deal is fully intact.
As coronavirus cases climb in Texas and Florida, officials threaten to stop reopening plans.
New York City restaurants are back in business, and New Jersey looks ahead to reopening its casinos. I'm Amy Morris. More ahead.
I'm John Stash Hour in Sports. The baseball season set to begin next month without a labor deal and an emotional day in NASCAR.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak. on Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 99.1 Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 106.1 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
Good morning, I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Global stocks gaining this morning. We're coming up to 6:01 on Wall Street, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are up 20 points this morning. Dow futures up 186, and NASDAQ futures up 58. The DAX in Germany's up 2.1%. CAC in Paris up 1.5%, and the FTSE 100 is up 1%. Nikkei 225 in Japan gained 0.5%. Hang Seng in Hong Kong up 1.6%. 10-year Treasury down 1/32, yield 0.71%. Yield on the 2-year 0.19%. NYMEX crude oil is up 1 1/3% or 56 cents at $41.29 a barrel. COMEX gold up 0.3% or $4.90 at $17.71.30 an ounce. The euro 1.1288 against the dollar. The yen 107.10. Nathan.
Well, Karen, we got a reminder overnight just how important the U.S.-China trade relationship is to investors. S&P futures fell more than 1% after comments from White House aide Peter Navarro. He responded to a long question about the trade agreement from Fox News anchor Martha McCallum with just 3 words. Here's that exchange.
Do you think that the president he obviously really wanted to hang on to this trade deal as much as possible, and he wanted them to make good on the promises because there had been progress made on that trade deal. But given everything that's happened and all the things you just listed, is that over?
It's over, yes.
That's all it took to send Dow futures down more than 450 points. The move prompted President Trump to come out on Twitter and reaffirm the agreement, writing, quote, "The China trade deal is fully intact." S&P and Dow futures rebounded.
We do have real trade issues on the horizon, though. Bloomberg News has learned the Trump administration is considering reimposing tariffs on aluminum imports from Canada. Sources say if Canada refuses to impose export restrictions on aluminum, the U.S. will announce 10% tariffs on the metal and implement levies by July 1st.
The stocks in Asia finished the overnight session higher, but those comments from Peter Navarro made for a wild ride. Bloomberg's Juliet Sally joins us from Singapore with details. Good morning, Juliet.
Good morning, Nathan and Karen. Confirmation from President Trump the U.S.-China trade deal does remain on track, saw the yen retreat from an earlier spike and risk assets push back to life. The Nikkei 225 closed higher by 0.5% in Tokyo. China's CSI 300 also rose around 0.5%, while in Hong Kong, Tencent lifted the Hang Seng as shares in the tech giant surged towards a record. In Singapore, Juliet Sali, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Juliet, thank you. Back here in the U.S., we're watching coronavirus outbreaks in several states. As infections rise in Texas, Governor Greg Abbott is threatening to stop or reverse the state's reopening plans.
COVID-19 is now spreading at an unacceptable rate in Texas, and it must be corralled.
Abbott's asking residents to wear masks and practice social distancing. He said closing down Texas again will be the last option.
Meantime, in California, Governor Gavin Newsom is also concerned about a surge in cases. Ed Baxter has the latest from our Bloomberg 960 newsroom in San Francisco.
The governor says individual behavior is the key.
Those that suggest we're out of the woods, those that suggest this somehow is going to disappear, these numbers tell a very, very different and sobering story.
Now, those numbers show the surge as big as April, and while he says he doesn't want a slow reopening or go back to closing...
We don't intend to do that. We don't want to do that. We are prepared to do that if we must.
The governor says the state cannot relax. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Ed, thank you. There's similar concern out of Florida, where Miami Mayor Francis Suarez is delaying reopening plans.
We are extremely concerned that hospitalizations are up. Ventilators are up, ICU patients are up, while deaths remain low for the time being. Obviously, that's a number that oftentimes will lag.
Suarez is delaying the reopening of movie theaters, nightclubs, and other large venues. He and mayors of other cities in Miami-Dade County are mandating face masks in public.
As Miami pushes pause on reopening, New York City just finished its first day in phase 2 of the process. And Bloomberg's John Tucker joins us live from New York with the details. Good morning, John.
And good morning, Nathan. Employees were allowed to return to the office. Outdoor dining resumed across the city, as did haircuts. There were lines outside barbers here in Midtown. And retailers from Macy's to Bloomberg Bloomingdale's welcomed customers inside their stores with restrictions. There was even a mannequin in the window display at Bloomingdale's wearing a face covering. But most office buildings were still empty, and the crowds of people were largely absent. It's mostly a slow return to the bustle that once was. In New York, I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, John, thank you. As states and cities reopen, the big question is how quickly the economy rebounds. For Blackstone CEO Steve Schwartzman, a strong recovery is still in the cards.
You'll see a big V in terms of the economy going up for the next few months because it's been closed.
Pershing Square CEO Bill Ackman sees a slower recovery. He says the market is not accounting for the pandemic's impact on small business.
I think we're going to, begin a recovery, certainly by year end. I don't think we'll be back to anything close to a normal economy until probably the second half of 2021.
Schwartzman and Ackman spoke at day one of the Bloomberg Invest Global Virtual Conference. Stay tuned for more from the event today when we hear from Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin, Carlyle CEO Kusong Lee, and PIMCO CEO Manny Roman. Catch those conversations starting at 1 p.m. Wall Street time on Bloomberg Radio and Television.
Before that, also coming up today, an exclusive interview with James Bullard. The St. Louis Fed president speaks with Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrow, and Lisa Abramowitz on Bloomberg Surveillance. That's coming up at 8:30 a.m. on Wall Street.
And S&P futures are higher, up 21 points. Dow futures up 192. NASDAQ futures up 62. 10-year Treasury down 230 seconds, yield 0.71%. And straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news. And this is Bloomberg.
All right, thanks, Karen. It's 6:07 on Wall Street. Now let's bring in Amy Morris for a check of what else is going on around the world. Good morning, Amy.
Good morning, Nathan. We are learning more about New York's reopening, even as those other cities and states you talked about are reconsidering loosening their coronavirus restrictions. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio.
As the nation's largest city, the nation's largest economy gets back on its feet, a huge step forward, the biggest step forward as we fight back from the coronavirus crisis.
He says the city will distribute 4 million face coverings, the first 2 million reserved for businesses. And New Jersey is opening up more. Governor Phil Murphy says more people can get together outside.
Outdoor gatherings may now increase from 100 to 250 persons maximum, and we will continue to have no limits for outdoor religious or political activities.
And Governor Murphy is looking ahead to when you can visit casinos again.
The casinos in Atlantic City will reopen on Thursday, July 2nd, and may operate at 25% of their capacity.
He says that's when indoor dining will once again be permitted with restrictions. Now, most new coronavirus cases in the U.S. are in the South and West. And New York Governor Andrew Cuomo says his state's numbers are still on the decline. The difference, he says, those other states didn't reopen properly.
In New York, we did this differently than the other places, and you're seeing that it worked in New York. The other places basically did reopening as a political exercise.
The nation's top health officials, meanwhile, are preparing for a flu season complicated by a coronavirus pandemic. Federal health experts, including Drs. Anthony Fauci, Robert Redfield, and Stephen Hahn, will testify about this on Capitol Hill today. And New Yorkers are picking their candidates for Congress, president, and other offices during today's primary. The state of New York is allowing anyone to vote by absentee ballot rather than risk exposure to the virus. 1.8 million people have asked for absentee ballots and have to get them postmarked today for those votes to count. Polling places are open, but there will be 3,000 fewer of them. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
Okay, Amy, thank you. It is 6:09 on Wall Street. Now time for the Bloomberg Sports Update. Here's John Stashower.
Thanks, Nathan. Looks as if there's going to be a 2020 baseball season, even though there's still no agreement between MLB owners and players. Their back-and-forth dance continued when the union's executive board voted 33-5 to reject an MLB proposal of 60 games. By doing so, they kept the right to file a grievance against baseball, where if they win, they could recoup a lot of lost revenue. Commissioner Rob Manfred now imposing the 60-game schedule, and assuming the two sides can agree on some health and safety issues, the season will start in late July, go until late September, with games played at teams' empty home stadiums. An emotional day for NASCAR at Talladega. Before they began the race that was rained out Sunday, all 38 drivers and pit crews together pushed Bubba Wallace's number 43 car to the front line the day after a racist noose was found in the garage of Wallace, who is NASCAR's only African-American driver. Then in the race, Ryan Blaney won in the photo finish.
Like I said, it wasn't only drivers, it was crew members, it was fans, it was NASCAR, it was everybody. So that moment just shows how much everybody supports each other. You may not like each other all the time. You might take each other off on the racetrack from time to time, but at the end of the day, we're going to support each other.
Kevin Harvick was said to have come up with the idea of the FBI investigating the noose incident. The defending NBA champion Toronto Raptors are in Fort Myers. First team arrive in Florida. Other teams will work out in their own cities before heading to Orlando, but having players travel in and then out of Canada would believe could cause logistic problems. John Stashower, Bloomberg Sports.
And John, a small liberal arts school in Maine is canceling its sports for the fall semester because of continued uncertainty during this pandemic. Bowdoin College is not going to be participating in fall or winter varsity sports because it won't have all its students on campus by the time this school year begins. Bowdoin's decision comes after the 13-member California Collegiate Athletic Association canceled its sports for the fall semester. They made their decision just about a month ago. S&P futures are higher now by 22 points. Dow futures a gain of 214. NASDAQ futures higher by almost 69 points after the overnight plunge sparked by China trade comments from the White House. Stay with us. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
What's the true value of your custodial relationship? Ben Harrison of BNY Mellon's Pershing explains.
As sophisticated investors demand more from their advisors, advisory firms, in turn, need to rely on their custodian to help them grow their complex businesses. At BNY Mellon's Pershing, supporting the rapid growth of RIAs is our number one priority. We understand what it means to deliver true value to our clients who are looking for a custodian that is aligned with their best interest and delivers high-value solutions, all in an open architecture environment with flexibility, choice, and transparency. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength, resiliency, and high-touch service that BNY Mellon Pershing provides. When you work with Pershing, we put your business first. Can your custodian say that?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Pershing Advisor Solutions, LLC. Member FINRA SIPC.
Have you wanted decisions? Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Tuesday morning by the scruff of the neck. Take this sunshine as an omen and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
You know that feeling when you get more than you expected? Like when your week off is forecast warm and sunny. Or when there's an extra unclaimed sausage left on the barbecue. Or joining Tesco Mobile and finding out you get the latest phones and 99% UK network coverage. Yeah, that feeling. Nice, isn't it? Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
99% 4G population coverage indoors and outdoors across UK.
Listen, that's a dream. Everyone has them.
jingling away in the back of our minds. And most of the time, that's where dreams stay. So easy to ignore. Anything can drown them out, and everything does. But at Honda, we listen to our dreams. We get right up close. And on really good days, they become reality. From 2022, Honda's mainstream cars will only be hybrid or electric. Honda, the power of dreams.
At Halfords, we're here to get you where you want to be. We fit car tyres for over 500,000 customers every year. We could fit yours at one of over 350 garages, or even on your driveway with our mobile experts, which means you can safely hit the road again and surprise that special someone.
Happy birthday!
From tyre fittings to MOTs, there really is no job too big or too small. Halfords, for life's journeys.
Television. Here's Emily Chang.
In April, the FCC unanimously approved Legato's request to use its spectrum to build new industrial 5G networks for critical infrastructure companies across the United States. We're talking about transportation companies, public safety companies, energy companies. This decision puts the U.S. a step closer to China in the race for 5G. However, Tuesday, the Commerce and Transportation Departments told lawmakers that they opposed Legato's proposed service. The Pentagon does as well. Joining us now, the CEO of Legato, Doug Smith. And Doug, you have the Commerce Department, the Transportation Department, and even the Pentagon saying they're concerned that this would disrupt GPS signals needed for defense, needed for aviation safety. The airlines also concerned about this. Why are all of them, these executive agencies, wrong?
We are thrilled that we have the approval that you mentioned. So in April, the FCC approved our petition for a license. It was an approval that came with unanimous support from the commissioner. So it was a 5-0 vote from the commissioners, had bipartisan support. And this, as you said, really is a step for our country towards 5G. And so we're thrilled with that.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and U.S. stock index futures are rising alongside European shares. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg, with S&P futures up 27 points. Dow futures up 248 and NASDAQ futures up 77. The DAX in Germany is up 2.6%. 10-year Treasury down 3/30 seconds, yield 0.71%. The yield on the 2-year 0.19%. NYMEX crude oil is up 1.9%, up 78 cents at $41.51 a barrel. COMEX gold up 0.3%, or $5.30 at $17.71.50 an ounce. The euro 1.1296 against the dollar. The British pound 1.2461. And the yen is at 107.07, and we are watching today for our report on new home sales at 10 o'clock Wall Street time. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Amy Morris with more on what's going on around the world. Amy.
Karen, New Yorkers head to the polls today, or the post office, to mail off those absentee ballots. More than 1.8 million people in the state requested absentee ballots. Polling places are open. There will just be about 3,000 fewer of them. New polling from Real Clear Politics finds former Vice President Joe Biden has a lead over President Trump that's grown to 9.5 points. A similar poll from 538 puts Biden ahead by 9.2 points. Health agencies across the U.S. are preparing for a flu season that will be complicated by the coronavirus pandemic. Anthony Fauci is director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. He'll be testifying before lawmakers on Capitol Hill later today. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Okay, Amy, thanks. It is 6:19 on Wall Street, live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak. Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager, and Brian Levitt is with us now, senior investment strategist at Invesco, as we watch futures and European stocks build on gains this morning. Of course, that came after the overnight plunge on Peter Navarro's comments about the China trade deal. How fragile would you say market sentiment is right now, Brian?
So I would say that markets are going to be very focused on policy. And so that's not just monetary policy. It's also fiscal policy. It's reopening policy, and it's trade policy. And we really need to get all four of those right. So I wouldn't necessarily call market sentiment fragile, but if you're going to come forward and there's going to be the notion that we're going to go in a different direction on trade policy, then you would expect the dollar to strengthen. You would expect markets to sell off as a result of it. Of course, the president backed away from it. But going forward, yeah, we're going to have to get those four sets of policy right. I suspect we will. If not, there will be volatility in markets until we ultimately get there.
Is there one policy set that's more important to investors than another right now?
Well, look, I mean, first and foremost, it was monetary policy. So what the Federal Reserve has done has had a significant impact on the market, basically signaling this is not going to be a liquidity event, a credit event, a banking crisis, a series of forced sales from margin calls from banks. So that was huge. So that now is in place. Going forward, obviously, I think it's reopening policy. And so what we've found as we look at cases around the world is that obviously COVID is not over. But what you found is that with the right set of reopening policies, you can compress largely the number of cases. It's not perfect, but you can compress the number of cases like you saw in Southeast Asia, like you saw in the New York tri-state area, and then start to think about safely reopening. So right now, that's going to be most critical. Investors are going to be watching that very closely.
When it comes to reopening policy, how concerned are you that some states like Texas, like Florida, may pull back on their reopenings as they start to see coronavirus cases pick up?
Well, I am concerned. And look, I think that we should first recognize how far we have come in a relatively short period of time, and then also recognize that the reopenings were never going to come like we're turning on a light switch. This is going to be a halting recovery, intermittent with fits and starts. At some point we're learning a lot more about this. We're understanding how human behavior affects it. So we're not going to be going back to the national lockdowns like we saw earlier in the year. We will be slowly progressing out of this, but with fits and starts. So what the market's going to be focusing on is, an ability to resume economic activity in a safe fashion. So it's troublesome when you see what's going on in certain states, but we also look at the positive again, where cases have stayed relatively compressed in a lot of Asia, although a little bit of a pickup in China. Cases have stayed compressed in the New York tri-state area. So there are positive signs, but this will take time.
So you're not in the V-shaped recovery camp then?
No, I wouldn't call it V-shaped. I know some people are calling it like a Nike swoosh. It's a recovery that is going to be very protracted and take place over a long period of time. But what makes sense what investors should be focusing on is that you don't necessarily need a V-shaped recovery. We didn't have a V-shaped economic recovery coming out of the 2008 financial crisis either. So a protracted weak growth environment with no inflation, rates staying low, the Fed accommodative indefinitely can actually be quite good for markets.
So in our last minute here, how do you advise your clients to position in a scenario where we might see a Nike swoosh-shaped recovery, Brian?
I think it's a lot of the leadership that we saw even really coming into this and what we saw in the first months of it. I would expect a world where interest rates stay relatively low. I think in this environment, the dollar is going to be pretty stable. And so what that means to me is I want to own stocks. I want to own credit. Within stocks, I still want to own the more growth-oriented parts of the market in the United States, but also globally in a what I expect to be a relatively stable dollar environment. It's at some point as we come through this, there should be a very nice deep value, early cyclical, small cap, value-oriented rally. And I know that people a few weeks ago, the breadth of the market was expanding, gearing up for that. I'm not sure we're there yet. It will happen at some point, but for now, I continue to favor stocks over bonds, credit over treasury, but really the more growthy parts of the market globally.
All right, Brian. Thanks so much. Good talking with you this morning. That's Brian Levitt, Senior Investment Strategist at Invesco. We're looking at green on the screen for equities around the world. S&P futures are up 25 points right now. Dow futures ahead by 232 and NASDAQ futures up 70 points. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Futures point to a bounce higher at the open after President Donald Trump said that the China trade deal was intact, easing doubts sparked earlier by comments from a senior advisor. And Wall Street started the week on a positive note with tech leading the advance. Although investors continue to weigh the impact of flare-ups of coronavirus cases in some parts of the country, today we'll watch for the new home sales numbers. Existing home sales yesterday came in with a disappointing result for May, falling almost 10% from the prior month to the lowest level since late 2010. More and more consumers are looking online for pre-owned clothing. That's boosting digital resellers like ThredUp, which has partnerships with other retailers. ThredUp says the digital resale market may grow 27% this year to about $9 billion. On the other hand, sales at traditional secondhand shops from Goodwill and the Salvation Army are expected to tumble 29% this year before rebounding next year. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
Hey, y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council. 25 years ago.
Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Tuesday morning by the scruff of the neck. Take this sunshine as an omen and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
This is a message from the government. Some businesses are now able to welcome back their employees and customers. To keep everyone safe, it's important you follow government guidance and make your workplace COVID secure. Businesses should carry out COVID-19 risk assessments, put in place hygiene procedures, and help staff and customers keep a safe distance. Talk to your employees, listen to their concerns, and if possible, help them to work from home.